Class is now in session. I am Professor Hockey, and today we're discussing Game 52 of the regular season between the San Jose Sharks and the Tampa Bay Lightning, in which the Sharks have won 4-3 in overtime. Obviously an extremely surprising win over a very, very good Tampa Bay Lightning team. Reminder, the Lightning won the 2020 and the 2021 Stanley Cups, and then in 2022 made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, only losing out to the Colorado Avalanche. Meanwhile, in those 3 seasons, the Sharks missed the playoffs in each and every one of them. So clearly these are two franchises in completely different worlds at this point, and the San Jose Sharks hadn't won in Tampa for many, many years, and so finally here, a game on the road in Florida, in Tampa Bay, they managed to get the victory. And this was not an easy one. This was not one that the Sharks coasted to a victory. Not only did it, of course, go past regulation time and giving the Sharks the victory here, but they also got kind of outplayed at even strength, and primarily the major reason why they ended up winning this game was actually their special teams. On the power play, the Sharks managed to score 2 of those here tonight, and both coming in the first few seconds of their respective power plays, which was quite interesting. And on the penalty kill, while the Sharks did indeed give up 1 goal, that one was to Braden Point, they killed off the rest, and there were many others to take this victory against the Lightning. Now let's go through this game. This one starts off in the first period, not particularly well for San Jose. It is Colton who scores the first goal of this game, but it is then tied up by Carlson, like I said, on the power play, his 17th of the season. However, it would be Braden Point twice who would take the lead back for the Lightning and expand on it further to have a 3-1 lead at the end of the first period. And this was a very precarious situation for the San Jose Sharks. The Lightning came into tonight's game with an absolutely perfect record when leading after 1 period, 20-0. They had yet to lose a game in this situation, and up by 2 goals makes it seem even more unimaginable that the Sharks could get back to this one. But in the second period, it would be Timo Meier scoring on the power play relatively late in that second to bring this game to within 1. And this was up to that point. The Lightning weren't necessarily generating too many shots, but after the Meier goal, they immediately come back and appear to score a goal to take the lead by 2, and that one looked like it was going to be Steven Stamkos's, but then the Sharks challenge on the offside. Now, the offside situation from a few weeks back against the Anaheim Ducks has made me doubt myself when it comes to actually calling offsides, but this Braden Point situation certainly seemed 100% offside, and finally I did indeed get that one right. The goal came back, and so the Sharks were still only trailing by 1 goal by the end of the second period, and in the third, it would be a Scott Harrington shot that would deflect not only pretty crazily off the stick of a Tampa Bay player, but then apparently would also hit Jonah Gadjevich in front to tie this game. And while there were many chances to take a lead for either side, though maybe primarily the Tampa side, it would end up going to that overtime period. But the Sharks obviously not a lot of success in post-regulation time thus far this season, so I didn't necessarily have a lot of hope, especially against a team like Tampa with players like Stamkos and Kucherov and Point, but the Sharks actually had possession of the puck in this overtime for the vast majority of it, so that was obviously a good thing, preventing the Lightning players from ever actually touching the puck, so they never really got to do too much dangerous. And while the first go-around of the Carlson, Hertl, Meier trio didn't really work out, once they came back on the ice a couple of minutes later, Carlson and Meier connect for a beautiful goal, Meier's 30th of the season, and as I said, they claim the win here tonight. Not particularly good for the San Jose Sharks draft lottery hopes, as a lot of the teams in the bottom 5 currently have actually been improving their game as of late. The Coyotes and the Blackhawks have been winning some games over these past few games, and so have the San Jose Sharks, so they had the opportunity to fall lower in the standings, but these wins, these past couple of games, are going to prevent that further. On to the players to talk about, we have the first line of Hertl and Meyer, joined once again by Noah Gregor, and this has to do with the fact that Kevin Labanc was yet again a healthy scratch here. He was a healthy scratch right before the 10-day break, and now he is a healthy scratch yet again. Continues to make absolutely zero sense for me for a couple of reasons. The first one, of course, is Labanc has actually appeared to be an effective first liner in many games thus far this season. It's certainly not a consistent basis. He's not a first liner at the end of the day, but he's been playing okay in that particular role and is rocking 25 points on the season. Compare that to, let's say, I don't know, Oscar Lindblom here, who has played almost every single game. He's actually been healthy scratch less games this season than Kevin Labanc has. Meanwhile, what Lindblom has something like 6 points on the year and has appeared invisible in pretty much more than half of the games that he has played, but apparently that's just perfectly fine and acceptable. But that's just the number one reason, performance-wise. The number two reason is that Kevin Labanc is a potential trade bait, not necessarily this season, because he does have one more year on his contract after this year, but he could be someone that the Sharks could look to unload next year, and you would want teams and scouts and general managers to get more exposure to how Kevin Labanc plays if the Sharks eventually want to move on from him at some point next season, near next year's trade deadline, if the Sharks are not doing particularly well, which is a very real possibility. And so if David Quinn is almost certainly going to be with the San Jose Sharks come next year's time, if he's continuing to just punish Kevin Labanc for seemingly no reason, at least no on-ice reason, you're not necessarily going to be showing off this player to a lot of potential suitor teams compared to an Oscar Lindblom, who nobody is going to ever trade for, even if he will also be in the final year of his contract, because he's just not good. Anyhow, on to how these players actually played here tonight. Like I mentioned earlier, the Tampa Bay Lightning controlled most of the pace of this game when at even strength. This line certainly had a couple of looks. There was like a decent Hertl wraparound early on in this game and a couple of very good Meyer attempts, but otherwise it wasn't super consistent from this line, and that was essentially a theme here tonight for the rest of the team. The same goes for the second line, but the second line struggled even more so on the defensive side of things. I felt as though there were some real rough plays defensively from this second line. They were the line that was on the ice for the Braden Point second goal. Barabanov and Benning and Couture all kind of just get mixed up by the Lightning movement around high up on the ice, and they're able to easily just sort of push it in and eventually get that puck into the net. I thought this was one of AC Mont's weaker games as a San Jose Sharks, which is technically not saying a ton because I feel as though AC Mont has frequently been a very good player for San Jose, and this is just sort of like a slightly lower level of play for him, but maybe the long break kind of took the wind out of his sails, so to speak, because like I said, the second line not particularly effective here tonight. They did still obviously get a couple of chances. This is what's frequently going to happen when a team is not really necessarily playing super well at even strength. They will occasionally get some sort of like rush chance or opportunity off of a turnover from the Tampa Bay Lightning, because the Lightning will be playing so much with the puck that it's kind of an inevitability unless they manage to play like a near perfect game, which is just so hard to ask, especially in a regular season type of game, especially when you have a 2-goal lead, especially when you're up against a team that's like near the bottom of the standings. So this line did still get a couple of chances, but nothing super spectacular. When it comes to the third line of Bonino, Sturm, and Lindblom, nothing was really doing here. Sturm did have a good chance, but it wasn't actually with this line. I believe he was on the ice with Meyer at the time and had a very good look, and it needed a very good save by Brian Elliott to stop him. But otherwise, when this line was on the ice, it was not particularly good at all. Lindblom was absolutely at fault for the Lightning first goal of this game. The puck comes to him along the boards, he mishandles it, then loses the battle, which allows the Lightning player to make that pass, and just generally looked extremely rough. I'm sure if that was Kevin Labanc in that situation, he'd be healthy scratched for the rest of his career. But meanwhile, it's Oscar Lindblom, so of course he gets regular shifts after that, and of course he'll be in the lineup come next game. I could be eating my words on that because he's definitely a very real option to bench if Labanc is to come back into the lineup, especially since Gregor could easily just move down to the third line and Labanc could take the spot on the first line. But it's just you watch that play and the weak effort there and the out-muscling and lost battle, and you say that's not something that you want to see from a last-place team or a close-to-last-place team, and yet you did. So it was just a bad game from the third line in general. And then on the fourth line, of course, Gadjevich did score a goal, though I won't necessarily give him a ton of credit for that. If he was the Tampa Bay player who tipped the puck on this one, off of the Scott Harrington shot, I would say, yeah, that was a great tip. But the fact that this one gets tipped off of that Lightning player and then just so happens to hit Gadjevich, apparently, I didn't even notice where it hit him, but I guess it did. It's not something that I'm saying, wow, great job, Gadjevich. And then the rest of the fourth line, they certainly tried. They had some moments where you're thinking like, hey, there's some decent chemistry here with like Svechnikov having a half-decent game and Lorentz having a half-decent game, but really nothing to write home about there. On the defensive side of things, of course, it was Erik Karlsson with another 3-point night, his 7th 3-point or more night of the entire season, which is a record for Sharks defensemen in San Jose Sharks history, so certainly very impressive in that regard, to go with Timo Meyer's third 3-point night as well. And Karlsson did this with a new defensive partner, that being Scott Harrington, taking the spot of the recently traded Jacob Megna to the Seattle Kraken. I will say Harrington did decent, I guess, in this spot. Nothing amazing. Definitely a drop-off defensively from Jacob Megna, but I was sort of expecting a lot worse, especially coming into a game against Tampa, and I don't think it was that awful, so I guess that's a positive, sort of. And then when it comes to the third pairing, I did actually once again want to mention Jacob McDonald, who I thought appeared on my radar a couple of times in a positive light, which was definitely nice to see. One of the only, actually the probably only other defenseman who I actually feel can actually play with the puck a bit in the defensive zone to be able to clear these pucks out. I remember it was many games ago, a few weeks ago, Drew Remenda made a comment after we saw Erik Karlsson do one of his classic puck handling skills to be able to clear the puck out of the zone, where he said, oh, we want to see more of that from Sharks defensemen. And my thought in my mind was, well, Karlsson's the only Sharks defenseman who's even capable of doing something like that. I wouldn't trust a Vlasic or a Benning or a Megna or a Harrington or a Shemek or a Cicek or anyone to try and stick handle and clear a puck out. They'd probably mishandle it and end up giving it away. Only Karlsson is capable of it. But we saw a couple of times here, at least one time, McDonald makes a play like that, which was kind of nice to see. So maybe we'll see a bit more of that. It is definitely more risky, but also if it pays off, you're getting that puck out of the zone for sure. And then finally we have Kaapo Kähkönen, and this started off like a relatively rough game because after that misplay from Lindblom near the blue line in the offensive zone for the or in the defensive zone for the San Jose Sharks, Kähkönen then also kind of misplayed this one, which led to the Colton goal. So I'm thinking this is going to be another classic Kaapo Kähkönen night, but he actually ends up playing very, very well here, and you could argue kind of stole the game for the San Jose Sharks. I will say Kähkönen did get kind of lucky at times, though it's not so much of a Kähkönen lucky as it is more of like a San Jose Sharks lucky, because I cannot even remember, or I can't even count the amount of times that the Lightning had pretty much a wide open net to shoot at and then just completely missed it or completely skied it or something of that nature, and then the Tampa Bay Lightning players like left looking at the sky like, wow, how did I miss that? It felt like that happened like 3 or 4 times at points this season, especially on the Lightning power play, or this game, especially on the Lightning power play. So this was probably a game the Sharks could have lost like 5 or 6-3 at the end of it, if not for some sort of bad bounces for the Tampa Bay Lightning, so to speak. But also, if not for some really strong goaltending from Kähkönen, they probably would have lost it 5-3 or 6-3 also. So this was definitely an impressive game against a very good team. So maybe after this long break, this will be a nice little reset for Kähkönen, and the Sharks could go with him for the rest of the season, and that could make Reimer very expendable, and the Sharks could then end up trading him for like a 6th round pick, which is probably at best what he's worth at this point, and Kaapo Kähkönen could be the future Sharks goaltender for the next few years, and everything will be unicorns and rainbows. It's unlikely. This is just one game, but you know, a man can dream. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will be back in action on Thursday, where they will take on, of course, the other Florida team, called the Florida Panthers. No surprise that once the Sharks are in the state of Florida, they'll play both of those teams. Unlike the Tampa Bay Lightning, who of course have that championship pedigree and are right up there in the standings at this point, the Panthers have been somewhat struggling thus far this season. I don't even know if they're in a playoff spot at this point. I do not believe they are, but they are, of course, not to be taken lightly. They just absolutely trounced the Tampa Bay Lightning yesterday, so maybe that's why the Lightning ended up losing this game, but we'll see how the Sharks play out. Class dismissed.